Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Quantum Leap, Season 1, Episode 13, titled Family Style. So, we have Ben, who has leaped into 2009 as a woman named Didi Prasad. We come to find that also Ben has leaped into a family-owned restaurant, where Ben is to come to find that this family's father and or husband is to have recently died. So we come to find out that this character was a person that was the glue to keep the family together. And so Ben is to find out that this restaurant is in quite a big amount of debt, and so much so that there are to be guns being kind of shoved in Ben's face, forcing him to realize that he needs to come up with some money fairly quickly to pay away this landlord slash loan shark like character, because we always have to find the danger somewhere in a Quantum Leap episode. It just can't be a normal episode that doesn't have to deal with much danger. We also come to find that this restaurant is going to burst into flame at some point for some goofy reason. And so Ben is to think that he's going to try and prevent that fire. And so we also in this episode have Ian. If, of course, you remember the last week's episode where Ian is to have that sketchbook that is to kind of point a finger at Ian, like, hey, he might be the bad guy of this story. We come to find that that is kind of quickly swept under the rug, and then Ian is to go off and get some more backstory, kind of a get a groove back kind of moment with Ian, where where Ian has to find Ian's self. And so I'm like, okay, so more throwaway for the story? Sure, alright. So we have me state overall that this episode is simple, but it's actually good. I thought. And so I would go on and state that this episode is like okay good. Comparing to other episodes, this does also come off like the Gordon Ramsay show, where Gordon Ramsay would come in and would take 24 hours to like save a restaurant and make it become profitable. Or you would have like these kind of bar rescue kind of shows and all these other kind of things that are fairly similar to this. It kind of feels like they stole a lot from all those things and just kind of inserted it in here. And so, but it was still a good episode. So with that said, I'm to go on and be honest. I was to have gone on and watched this episode live, and I don't usually, or I didn't in this instance go on and take as much in-depth stuff that I would in other reviews. So I'm going to try and figure out all like the bits and pieces. So like the bits and pieces will be there, but like they probably won't be in the same order as the episode. So that'll just be what it is for this spoiler version. But so with that said, let me know in the comments below how you felt about this episode. Maybe certain people did not like this episode. Maybe certain people thought that this was a great episode, and whichever one have you. But yeah, so with that said, I think it's about that time to just double fire this bad boy up, because I think it's about that time yet again to cover spoiler alert time. Spoiler time is about that time again to spoil this episode. I think I want to just kind of get the Ian stuff completely out of the way so I can just focus on the Ben stuff. So that's where I'll just head this. We come to find that Ian is confronted with that sketchbook from the prior episode. And Ian is to look at this and be like, oh my god, yeah, I guess they did draw me. And so Ian is to just write this off as just like, well, it must have been future me who went on and was to have told Ben some information of why he should have left. And they're like, yeah, that sounds like a quick way to just write us out of this pickle. And so we then later find that Ian is like trying to put all this stuff together and figure out like how he could have gone on and done what he'd done. And Magic is like, you know what, Ian? Like, you're working yourself to the bone. How about you just take some time off? Like, how about we also just, like, start to, like, bug all your phones and... and really just start to look into Ian a lot more than we did before. How about we just start to do some investigating on Ian? Because I'm waiting for the shoe to drop to just be like, hey, Ian was a villain all along. I'm like, wait a minute, what? But again, whenever there is a villain, I guess, in the show, we go on to realize, like, well, maybe they aren't the villain. Maybe they're our friend. And we have to kind of pull that crap from, like, the whole Janet episode from before, where it's like, yeah, maybe you weren't as bad as we thought you were, and maybe we're not as bad as you thought I once was. It's stupid garbage crap. So Magic's like, Ian, go on and find and get your groove back. Like, go in and find yourself. So, or just F off and F yourself. I don't know, just do something. So Ian goes off and meets with an old flame named Rachel. And so Ian just shows up at her place at work, like, hey, like, here's some stuff that I know you liked at some point. And so we, of course, have Rachel talking to Ian. And Rachel, of course, is to tell us that Ian has always been so secretive, even to the point of, like, when Rachel's asking, it's like, well, hey, like, why, like, what are you working on? Like, what kind of brought you to me? And Ian's like, well, that's classified. And Rachel's like, well, of course it is. It's like, that's the reason why I dumped you. Because, of course, like, you wouldn't let me in, Ian. You wouldn't let me in. So we have Ian that has to, like, figure out a way to, like, metaphorically state why he's really there with Rachel and how it ties to her to Ian's team in a way. So Ian goes on to state that since he can possibly have hurt his team, he's looking at the person that he hurt last to compare and take notes, so to speak. So Rachel's going to be like, oh, okay, all right, like, I can understand that part of it. So they talk it out, and again, this is quite a bit of throwaway, but at least it was some interesting backstory for Ian's character. So moving on past that now. So we have been 2009ing it up, and so Ben comes to find out that he is to try and save this restaurant where it seems that nobody really works there. We have, like, one guy who is to leave because he has this sneaker sale. We have another guy who continues to just keep falling asleep everywhere. Like, Ben trips over him, and he's going on and kind of leaning over on this one, like, piece of like cooking equipment, and he's sleeping. So we have Ben that is to realize that this family is struggling debt-wise, as we come to find a woman named Kathy is to grab Ben, and it's like, well, hey, where's my money? Like, you owe me money. And so and he and so Kathy has a goon with her holding a gun to Ben's face. And so Ben is like, well, hey, like, whatever profits that this restaurant makes tonight, like, I'll go on and I'll give you that as a way to kind of like pay you off. And Kathy's like, oh, okay, all right. So we have Addison, who is to also appear during this point and kind of tell Ben, it's like, well, hey, this restaurant is gonna burn down tonight, so like you have to like figure out a way to possibly stop that from happening, which he won't. And so Ben is to try and figure out a way to make this restaurant seemingly more relevant. Having Ben go on and talk to this family who owns this restaurant, but like, well, hey, how about we go on and be part of a Groupon, and we can have like a 2-for-1 deal and kind of bring in more customers or bring in new customers to try this food. And so we come to find that Manisha and Sonali, which I'm sure I'm going to be butchering some names here when it comes to this episode. I'm not going to just try and and not say that because it's granted. So we have Ben, who brings that to his mother, or his mother and sister, and of the person that he leaped into. So they're like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So Ben goes on and sets up this Groupon, and it seems that further and further they're finding out that they're getting quite a few people. They're getting like hundreds of people that are coming to this restaurant, and Ben's like, yeah, this is great. This is going to help us out. So we have Ben that is to come to be with Sanila, or wait. Let me back up a little bit. So Ben goes on and is talking to Manisha, and she, of course, is talking about how their mother, Sanila, is to be set in her ways because, of course, Sanila, once her husband died, aka their father, like, a lot had changed from Sanila, and how, like, she had just kind of like been kind of like a echo of her former self or something like that, some goofy thing like that, where it's like she hasn't really been herself since their father had died. So Manisha wants to go on and revolutionize this Indian restaurant, and Ben is like, well, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, but you just have to go on and figure out a way to convince like our mother of that. And so really, like, the more and more that Manisha like tries to like kind of bring this up, the more that Sonali is like, I'm not having it. No, I don't want this. And so they get to a point of them consistently just kind of butting heads so much in this episode, to a point where it escalates to having Manisha be like, you know what, like if you're not just gonna hear me out, like I think I need to just go on and hit the bricks. Like I think I'm gonna just quit. And but let me back up a little bit. So if we have a little bit of time with Manisha, let's get into Sonali. So we come to find that Sonali and Ben are dealing with some cousins that are coming in to talk to Sonali, and so we come to find that Sonali is to realize like how much she doesn't like. She talks about how she doesn't really like these cousins, and that normally Dee Dee's dad would be able to come up with a way to get rid of them or just kind of talk them out of here. And so it seemed with, of course, him passing again, like he was the glue to this whole restaurant. And so now that Sonali is having to deal with this, deal with these cousins, which we'll come to find out in the later part of the episode, like these cousins will come back and will help out the restaurant and will also just invest in it. So huzzah for that. Convenience of characters that luckily have the money to be able to be able to invest in this place. So we have Ben who trying to think of where to go here. So again, all of this escalates to Manisha quitting this job, and so they're really just starting to run out of people to have them help with this restaurant, to the point of Sonila is running around like crazy, trying to take her brace off so that way she can try to get this food ready, and she accidentally cuts her hand. And so Ben goes on and notices that this person is to have cut her hand, and so Ben is getting flashbacks from his mother, and is thinking like, "Oh my God, my mother is to have died." And Addison's like, "Well, hey, like your mother died from an aneurysm. Like this is not the same thing. Like this person just fainted because of there being too much blood loss, I guess, even though it doesn't really seem like there's a huge amount. Like there wasn't a huge blood trail or something." But so, here's a funny story. There, of course, to be one time where, like, I went to, like, put something in somebody's car at one point, and when I was just kind of like just kind of walking back, I all of a sudden was to just kind of be kind of just putting my hand side to side. All of a sudden, I noticed that my hand was bleeding. I was like, "Well, hey, where'd blood come from?" And then all of a sudden, I noticed like I cut myself somewhere, and I was like, "Oh, okay, all right." Didn't know I did that, so I ended up kind of like washing my hands and putting a band-aid over it and whatever, but I was like, like that was like kind of weird. So yeah, sometimes you just never notice, like when you're kind of grabbing certain items, and then you're walking back, and then all of a sudden you just notice that there's blood on your hand. Of like, okay, what happened with this? It's life is crazy. So Ben tries to wake her up so that way they can put water on this wound. And so when Ben is going on and putting a band-aid or a bandage over Sonila, they go on and they both realize that they need to speak to Manisha and convince her, like, well, hey, she needs to come back. Like, she like I think she'll go on and she'll really help this restaurant out. She has really good ideas, and like both mother and daughter, which is Ben, come together to realize like yeah, like we really should do this. Like we really should go back to her and try to make amends. We also had Ben who was to have like a nose earring, and we of course had Addison just kind of make light of that. So we also had Addison go on and tell Ben it's like, well, yeah, like if of course basketball or the thing that he did even before this, the science stuff, wasn't in his wheelhouse, like cooking is really in his wheelhouse. And so I'm like, what is this like the goal of every episode? We have to like find Ben's favorite thing. You know what I want to? I want to go on and see Ben do stand-up comedy. I want to just see him fail miserably at that. Like him just become like the Joker or something. Because like I'm waiting for an episode where he does stand-up comedy, and that is not in his wheelhouse. And like I want to see how that works out. Because I remember the one episode where like of Quantum Leap where like Bob Saget was like the comedian and everything like that. So it'd be kind of cool how to see that kind of play out with Ben here. But anyways, we and also while I was kind of looking for images of this episode, I would go on to find that in the other Quantum Leap there was this one Scott Bakula image where he's in this apron. I have no idea what that episode is from, but I'm assuming that must have something to do maybe with cooking. I don't know. It just that's what just popped up. It was weird. But anyways, so they both Ben and Sonali make their way to find that Nisha had gone on to this pizza restaurant or this pizza establishment, and so we would come to find that these people have like traditionally come to this place because I guess this was like their first interaction of American cuisine, and which of course was this pizza. And so they go on and they eat into the pizza, and it's like, yeah, like this is terrible, but in a good way. It's like, well, yeah, when probably going on and eating quite a bit of like food that is to be like for a show, like who knows like how really prepared that is. So there's quite a bit of time where you'd have to like go to the conclusion of like, well, how long was this taped? Like how cold were these pizzas, so on and so forth, and all kinds of things. But anyways, so we have them go on and remember these stories of the dad and how he would go on and feel that he would need to set up certain kinds of foods a certain way, like putting way more spice than it probably should have. And because I guess that like he thought that was kind of like the American way of things. And so and how like this first pizza like was to of course set this dad up to think like this is the American way of meals. And yeah, like I guess he was not to have gone on and go to a Mickey D's or McDonald's or a Burger King, because man would have been massively surprised. But so anyways, because when thinking about it, like, isn't also pizza, like, no offense, but it's an Italian thing? And so, like, he should have gone on and actually had, like, McDonald's or some other kind of thing. But anyways, so they go on and they realize, like, okay, we really just need to just work together and figure this out. So by the time they make their way back to the restaurant, they find that this restaurant is on fire because I guess somebody left an oven on. And we find the landlord lady, we find Kathy, that is to, of course, be kind of out there talking to like one of the firemen or one of these people, one of these emergency service people. And Ben's like, oh my god, like, you set this fire. And we would come to find out that later that Addison would go on and tell us that one of the people that were going to pitch in for this restaurant was to also be a private investigator, and we would come to find out that this guy finds out that, yeah, like, Kathy did set this place on fire. So Ben's like, God, like, now, like, we don't even have a restaurant to feed people. And so we have everybody that's going on and giving up. Ben is like, I'm never getting out of here. We have Manisha. It's like, well, hey, like, I guess I'll go on and find a new career. Sonali is like, well, hey, I guess I'll just kind of go back and just have to like travel or something. Like, she's just gonna have to go back to Egypt or whatever. So all has been lost, as we are to assume. I feel like there was something a little bit before this that I kind of forgot about, and so. But I think I'll just move on until I can remember what exactly it is. So we have Ben, who's to come up with this idea. It's like, well, hey, oh yeah, before the place burnt down, Ben asked Addison about what had happened after the building had burnt down. Addison had mentioned that there had been somebody that bought the thing of land, and because they wanted the location. So Ben ends up calling up that guy and is to figure out a magic set of words about the five senses and all this stuff to connect to his restaurant and to try to get this investor to be interested in checking out this restaurant and hopefully investing in it before it actually burns down. So Ben, of course, now the place had burnt down, so there's nothing really he can do. So Ben is to come up with the ideas like, well, hey, like, how can we still feed people, but not in that same location? And so Ben is going on and telling Manisha and Sonali to, like, well, hey, like, just get every bit of food that you can get from your refrigerators and whatever, and from home, and we'll just have to, like, come up with food that like we'll have to make at another location, and like tell people, like, just kind of leave a note on our restaurant that we have temporarily moved here and so on and so forth. So Ben goes on and talks to Addison, and he's coming up with an idea which will lead them to have this this thing where they have this kind of tent restaurant, because Ben is going to look into some people who are to get married soon, and so Ben is to kind of take certain things that they had already kind of bought and already have taken purchase of, and so Ben is to go on and bring his food into this already kind of set up thing. And so that is to be their grand master plan. Like, oh yeah, we're still going to get profit for this and turn this whole thing around. So we come to find that Manisha is to be ordering everybody around, and everything seems to be working out perfectly once Manisha and Sonali get there. So when Ben is to meet up with Sonali and Manisha, we have Ben that's like, well, hey, like, where's the food that you guys had? And Sonali's like, well, we brought something else instead. And that ends up being like the whole like family to kind of help them out. Because of course they need extra hands because we can only have so many other people who were to have worked at this restaurant who were to either have a sneaker sale or a sleeping problem. And more than likely, those people should have been fired. But anyways, so we have Ben that's like, okay, great. Like, we'll just come up with some kind of quick thing for from Manisha's kind of thought of where she wants to go with this food, and we'll just figure it all out. So they go on, they put this food together magically, it just appears, I guess. So it all works out. And so the problem of it is the investor doesn't come after all because this person is dealing with food poisoning. Kind of ironic. So they're like, oh no, like who's going to invest in the restaurant? What are we going to do? And so we have the cousin that had come to help out. It's like, well, hey, like, you know what? I have some money. How about I invest in this restaurant? And then all of a sudden, the rest of the people that also came in to help out, they're like, well, hey, how about I invest in this too? Me too. Hey, over here. Let's do some investing. And so we come to find out that all of this is seemingly going to work out in the end. So Addison is to go on and tell Ben like what's going to happen with all these people, and come to find out one of the people that are willing to invest in this restaurant is also the PI, and that's where how that story all unfolds. And so yeah, so we come to find that Addison's like, okay, like Ben, like it seems like you're gonna leap soon because everything's just working out like gangbusters. And Ben goes on and looks at Sonali, and he's like, you know what? Not quite yet. So Ben goes over and talks to Sonali, and it seems that Sonali wants to go on and wants to do some traveling. And it's like, okay, great. Like that seems to be like Manisha is just kind of handling the business, so like why don't you just go on and just take a break? So we have Ben, of course, who is to go on and tell like this person's mother that like trying to get possibly some closure from Ben's own mother by trying to like say what he probably would have wanted to say to this mother. So telling her that he loved her and this and that, and we have this kind of really tender moment. So Ben goes on and of course leaps, and we find is to leap into a aircraft carrier. And so we realize that it seems that this aircraft carrier is going to go into war, and not quite sure what exact time period this will possibly be. But I was just like, okay, like this will probably be a really interesting episode either way, because there might be some historical value maybe with this episode, or it might just be another chucking thing out there. But either way, we have Ben, who is to, of course, be in the Air Force or the Navy, and because I would be confused of which exactly. But so either way, that will be a interesting episode. So with that said, I think I'm just gonna get out of here so I can go on and kind of quickly get this out of the way. It feels like I kind of did this a lot quicker than normal. Maybe again, maybe this episode was so simple, or maybe I just kind of quickly like skated away through a lot of the dialogue of this episode. But let me know in the comments below if there's anything that I hugely skipped out about, or if there was an important moment that I just kind of just didn't go into. But other than that, I think I covered most of this. So I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, buddy. Bye, buddy.